Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at recruiting firm Riderflex. If you enjoyed today's guest interview, please give it a like and be sure to subscribe to the Riderflex podcast. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Jeff Fleischman on the Riderflex podcast. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. Are you in Florida or are you traveling?
I'm a newly transplanted Floridian, so I'm at home and enjoying the new warmer weather compared to the Northeast.
Right. You definitely have that Northeast accent, by the way. I'm sure you know that.
I've never heard that before.
Are you in Delray? Where are you at? Where are you?
I'm in Boynton Beach, right next door to Delray.
Okay. Now, July and June, July, and August are a little warm. But were you there for this last winter?
It'll be my second full summer. So I tell people you have spring and summer here, maybe 3 days of winter, but the summers aren't terrible. Obviously, when it gets super hot, you don't lay around in the sun, but yeah, you have plenty of AC down here and plenty of alternatives than baking alive. So it's not too bad.
It's not quite as hot as Miami, right? It's still pretty bad, but not quite as bad.
I'd say pretty close. We're about 60 miles from Miami, so not terribly different.
Okay. Why'd you pick that area? Just curious.
We moved down. We stayed on Satellite Beach for about 3 weeks, and we had gotten a rental in Delray. And rentals were not that easy. It was during COVID. We had a dog, and so again another obstacle to getting a rental. So we found one in Delray. We were open to West Coast, East Coast, and we settled here. Loved the area. Downtown Delray, Boca. We have Fort Lauderdale to one side, West Palm to the other. Miami. I went to a Met game in Miami. And I had front row seats right behind the Miami dugout, right?
Really?
And the only reason why I took those seats because the seats behind the Mets dugout on the other side were 3 times as expensive.
Were you wearing your Met stuff?
I was wearing my Mets stuff. I didn't have to worry about being jumped since everyone in the stadium seemed to like the Mets, and there weren't many people. So, but no, it's been a good transition. I love Florida. I do like the warmer weather, and I wanted to see palm trees and sunnier skies, and I got both.
Nice. Okay. Very good. Well, so tell us, where did you grow up? Give us some family, early history stuff.
Well, as you can tell from the accent, it wasn't Kansas. I was born in Brooklyn and moved to Queens when I was about 5. So basically stayed there through the time I got married and actually lived there for 3 years. Went to school there, spent my whole life there. And then after I got married, we moved to New Jersey, settled in the suburbs. And,
Queens to New Jersey is not, it's a little different, but just, it's not quite like Florida.
Yeah, no, not quite the same as Florida. It was a little bit different because my first house had 1/3 of an acre. And I remember growing up in Queens, I had a very small house. We had 7 people. When I was growing up, we had probably 7 people in, I want to say 1,200 square feet. It was very small. My grandmother lived in what was called a living room, which was really not a living room, but we called it a living room. And so when first night I moved to New Jersey, it was a 2,400 square foot house. So not terribly big, not super small either. And I remember coming down the steps. I remember this very clearly as if it happened yesterday. I came down the steps. I looked in my kitchen. I looked in my family room and said, I live in a mansion.
Right. What'd your folks do?
My dad worked for the Depository Trust Company. He was a supervisor. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and they raised 4 boys, and we weren't too much trouble. No, not too much trouble. So
Where were you? Where were you in the mix?
I'm at the top end. I'm an identical twin.
Oh, really? Okay. Now, were you the good kid, the bad kid, somewhere in the middle, rebel? Where were you?
Well, growing up in Queens and Brooklyn, you become street smart. So I consider myself someone who was smart enough not to get into a lot of trouble.
Okay.
But on occasion, we'd have some fun and maybe do some things looking back I wouldn't do today. But it really wasn't too bad. I didn't give my parents any headaches, no arrests, no tickets, no
Oh,
subpoenas, nothing
all
like
right.
that.
All
So,
right.
okay.
Well, now you're roughly my age, I think. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I said, Scott, I said, aren't you so glad we didn't have cell phones and social media and sending pictures and all this stuff that can be trapped online? I was, man, I probably would have gotten a lot of trouble.
A lot of people don't realize the permanency of making a statement, a comment today.
Oh,
I mean,
right?
people could have made stupid in the moment statements that
Oh,
they
oh, yeah.
may have meant, may not have meant, but I have to say, I tell my kids and I tell young people, no matter what you do, I don't care if it's Snapchat or TikTok,
Yeah.
anyone can take a picture of a picture and make that public. So don't think that you're all secure and encrypted, because there's 100 ways to beat the system.
That's
And
right.
if you're going to say something, be prepared to live with that for the rest of your lives. Unfortunately, for me, my internet service was my bike.
Yeah, right.
So I
Totally.
grew up, yeah. So I grew up in Queens, and I got my bike, and my mom said, "Be home for dinner."
Right.
So to be home for dinner, and then I get back on the bike and go hang out with my friends and be home when I was supposed to be home. But that was basically the form of communications, is riding your bike to hang out with your friends.
That's right. Yep. I was the same. It was wonderful, actually. There are times now when I think, man, remember when you could leave the house and nobody could contact you until you came home? That was so awesome.
Simple days, right? Simple,
Yes,
easy days.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you have an early epiphany like, okay, I want to be a marketing executive when I grew up? I'm going to guess not, but tell me yeah, when you went to school, and kind of walk us into how you decided what you wanted to be when you grew up.
Yeah, great question. So I really had no idea what I wanted to do.
Like most of us.
Growing up, like most of us. And some days I wonder if I'm still figuring out what I want to do. But I would say that at some point in high school, I always felt I wanted to go to college, but not really any clue as to which college I wanted to go to.
You just wanted to party and have a good time. That was your primary goal.
All right, this is the sad truth. Okay, I'm the first college graduate in my family. I had no idea about college, none whatsoever, other than you go to college, you get a degree, and you graduate and you make a good living. My parents never forced me or said you have to go to college. They wanted me to go to college.
Okay.
And I went to a pretty tough high school. Matter of fact, I have the newspaper in my cabinet behind me.
Tough as in hard to get good grades, or tough as in you might get in fights every day?
Tough as in you might not survive any day. So certainly wasn't known for its academics. I have and I kind of wear it as a badge. It's on the daily news, the city's worst school. And on the
Really?
cover, I'm not kidding. I keep it on my phone. It's in my favorites, and I show people where I came from. So there were, gangs and weapons, and this is, I don't want to say how old I am, but this goes back into the mid 70s when I was in high school, into late 70s actually. And it was a pretty rough school, and I could have easily gone one way or the other way. And somewhere something clicked in my head, and I said, I think I'm going to try to go to the right and make a right turn, go to college, and try to get out of the life. Not that my life was bad. I loved growing up in Queens. I had a great childhood.
But it could have went dark. It could have went dark on you pretty quick.
It could have gone dark pretty quickly. And I've seen stuff in that high school that most people could not even imagine.
Did any of your brothers end up going down the wrong path?
No. Luckily, knock on wood, we all went down what I think was the right path. Three
Is
of
that
us.
because you're? So 3 of you graduated college?
Yep. 3 of us have college degrees.
And neither one of your parents had a degree.
No.
Congrats to them, sending 3 boys to school. Was your dad a tough character? Was he pretty
No, my dad was a pretty easygoing guy. Matter of fact, low key, he was very artistic, and I have some of that from him. And matter of fact, my high school notebook is back there with the Rolling Stones picture on it. I painted that myself by hand with a little tiny brush. And I
Cool.
still have that from high school.
Cool.
So he was autistic. He was a great ball player, and I didn't realize how good he was until he told me he tried out for the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Yankees. And at the time, he lived in Brooklyn. He went to Erasmus High School with Sandy Koufax and a bunch of other great ball players.
That's pretty cool.
And so I said, Dad, what happened? You tried out? He goes, well, the Brooklyn Dodgers didn't want me, which is disappointing to him because he was a huge Dodger fan. But the Yankees invited me back to spring training. And I went, what? I couldn't believe him. I said, yeah, right, sure. And I'm Bud Harrelson. Bud Harrelson was a shortstop for the New York Mets at the time.
Okay.
And he said, no, I'm serious. And he took out these letters and showed me these letters. And I never had seen them before. And I have to tell you, I never looked at him the same way. I couldn't believe what a good ball player he was. And then I saw him play stickball and softball in the neighborhood leagues.
Yeah.
And he once hit a ball in the street with a stickball, and that ball went so far we never found it.
How about that? That's pretty neat. That's pretty neat. Is he still alive?
No, unfortunately, he passed away when I was a junior in college, out of the blue. It was rough. He was a glue in the family, just a great guy. And
he was probably junior in college. So he was probably what, late 50s, early mid 50s?
46.
Oh, man, that's tough.
Yeah, he got a bad break and had a massive heart attack. He was at the stock exchange watching stocks because he loved that. And back then, if you didn't read the newspaper the next morning to track the stock prices, there was no way of tracking stocks. Like now, you just pick up your phone and you can. So he liked to walk over. He worked downtown Manhattan. Liked to look at the stock prices. Went to the observatory on occasion, just because that's what he liked to do. Is his hobby. And I got into stocks because of him. And he right there on the observation area, he just passed away. It was complete immediate.
That's tough. No, that's tough. That tells us something about your mom, though, because she then ended up getting two younger boys through college after he was gone. Right? Is that the timeline?
Yeah, pretty much. So my middle brother went to college, graduated. My younger brother went into the military. I don't think college was really for him. So he did the military, and then he ended up working. He's working in private industry now. So it was a tough time for her. She was.
Oh, I bet.
We were all lost because he was kind of the guide and the leader of the family. And my mother, to her credit, was able to get back up on her feet. And she worked a small part-time job, but she managed to get through everything. And it was very devastating for her because she was 44 at the time. Now I think about 44. It seems like, I wish I was 44.
Did she remarry? Is she still alive, or how's your mom?
She remarried years later, but she passed away about 4 years ago. And she met a great guy. His name is Walt, and Walt was a great husband to her, a great stepdad. And some people don't have a one good marriage. My mom was really fortunate to have two wonderful marriages.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Of course, he had to be good because there was 4 men from Queens that would have come over and paid him a visit if he didn't take care of her.
Yeah. Well, if you watch Goodfellas, I guess I could throw the accent up a couple of notches and wear the right clothes. But sort of.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so you go to school. Walk me into how what'd you major in again? What'd you get your degree?
Finance.
Finance. Okay. Yep. I I always love it when these finance majors turn into marketing executives, because well, why finance? Did you like the numbers because your dad, the stocks and numbers and all that? Is that why you went with finance early on?
I started out with pre-med. So I was taking pre-med classes. I was very good in high school. I had really, really good grades. I took advanced placement hematology, advanced placement biology. So we were working with E. coli samples. We were working with blood samples from Sloan Kettering, and our final was blind samples of blood. And we had to do this the old way, not the computerized way. And we had to diagnose the type of blood disorder, if any. And I just found it fascinating. So I loved bio. I love biology. Took it in college, started off in college, took some classes. And about a year and a half in, I just realized that, coming from a modest background, how much time and money it would take to become a doctor. And I just said, you know what? I just don't think I can do it. And of course, in hindsight, with the right advice and guidance, maybe I would have stuck it out because I was really good at it. But went into finance, went to business, and then found finance. I do like numbers. I have to say I wasn't really good at first with the numbers. It really took some time for me to really become disciplined and focused on, learning advanced statistics and, present value of money and compound annual growth rates and, all the fun stuff that comes with finance. But I settled in, became very comfortable with it, and started my career as a finance person.
How do you transition into a big time marketing executive? What happened? You're in a meeting one day and somebody's like, hey, you're kind of creative. You got some ideas. Come to this marketing meeting.
Well, Steve, I'm glad you asked that question. So it really is interesting. So I started off in finance, a lot of numbers. I did some product management work. I joined JP Morgan, what's now JP Morgan. At the time, it was Chase Manhattan, in the management development program. And then went through a lot of their consumer businesses, computer operations, and settled in education finance and got involved in numbers and product marketing and some things. So I had a little bit of taste of marketing, but really stuck to the numbers side and had a subsequent number of jobs that were all numbers based. And I enjoyed it. And at some point I had left Chase, went to American Express.
Now, let me pause right there for the listeners. You became a VP at Chase pretty fast at a pretty young age, right? That was a nice climb there.
I had a good progression. So every job I took, I had a focus of what is that job going to do for me. And in fact, for anyone listening, a really good piece of advice someone gave me is, okay, so you know what this job is, what's the next job after that? Because if you can't figure out what that next job coming after this one is, think twice about taking this job.
Love it.
And so it was a really good piece of advice. One I learned many years ago and haven't forgotten. So,
sorry, I didn't mean to break your stride right there as you were flowing, but I did notice, for the listeners, really good progression, in your career with responsibility levels and titles, and it doesn't always go that smooth, for people. I don't know if smooth is the right word. I know it was a lot of work and I'm sure there are a lot of bumps in there, but it doesn't always hit like that, Right. And you always did, which tells me you were you were constantly looking forward. I'm guessing you were raising your hand a lot saying, hey, I'm over here. I'll take more.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you two things, actually. So part of that's true. I worked hard and figured that would go a long way, just by working hard, getting results. And to some degree, that's true.
That's part of it. Yep.
I learned also later in my career that the non-essentials, what I call non-essentials, but the really turned out to be essentials of how you market yourself, you build your brand, you develop your reputation, is critically important. And absolutely. I always tended to underinvest in that aspect. So my advice to people is that while you don't want to shamelessly self-promote yourself, even though I've seen people do it and become very successful, I still think building a very strong foundation in what you can do, the skills you have, the bridges you build are going to help you in your career. And careers are not straight lines. I can tell you even now, and I'm on the second half of my career in terms of where I am in my journey, I have not had an easy run over the last decade or so. Merges, economic downturns, choosing the wrong job, all have come into factor. So perseverance becomes really important. Don't ever get so disappointed or so tuned out that you give up. And I've never given up. And in the end, it works out. Pitbull said something profound on a 60 Minutes interview. He says, the harder you work, the more luck you get.
It's true. I want to pause there and kind of just emphasize some of the things you just said. I felt very similar, coming from a background where I had a dad that just worked hard, right? It was all about work ethic. And I was very much like that in my 20s and 30s and even even, some of my early 40s, but mainly my 20s and 30s, I just kept thinking, if I work harder than everybody else, that is what matters and nothing else matters. And I did not spend enough time on relationships. I did not spend enough time on what I call the soft skills or marketing myself or, making sure that I'm getting in front of the right people and some of these moves that you need to make, the relationship marketing piece of it. I did not spend enough time doing that. And like it or not, it is part of it. And you got to have both. You do need to market your career, raise your hand, get in front of the right people, have the right relationships, make sure the right people like you, and work hard.
All true.
Yeah.
It was a tough lesson for me because I'd say, but I'm getting a lot of my work done. I'm getting great ratings, and I always got great ratings, good reviews, good increases. But there really was a blind spot for me in my ability to see just how important that was and discounting it a little bit too much. So having said that, I learned from it and still probably skewed more. More people tell me I'm understated in my capabilities and what I'm good at doing. That's just part of my persona. I'm not someone who's going to walk into a room and fill it up with what I can do. I rather, just get to the work and get it done and be able to show what I'm capable of. So
yeah. So what happened? I want to know about this pivot. There was a turn or a doorway somewhere where,
Yep. So I'll tell you, Steve, it was at American Express. I had been in finance for a couple of years, working for some very smart people. And the head of risk management brought me into the risk side of the organization, and he put me in charge of, I won't bore you with the details, loan loss provision, basically a $2 billion expense. Every basis point was worth about $10 million. So when you're off on your forecast by just a few basis points, it's really a big deal. And so I was working on the numbers, like I mentioned, a gentleman named Ash. I don't know if I'm allowed to use last names, but his first name is Ash. Absolutely incredible boss from the perspective of knowing numbers better than anyone. As much as I tried to go in the office knowing numbers better than he, never happened. Maybe once. So he was fantastic. So one day he comes into my office and says, "You're in charge of the web for risk management. Go figure it out."
The web for risk management. Okay.
Yeah, I was in risk management. So I remember him come into my door. I'm kind of visualizing it and watched him walk away. And I said, "Web." That was like AOL and chat rooms. I mean, American Express didn't even have a website. We were part of Keyword and AOL. So I started to get engaged on the website for risk management, coming up with ways we can leverage technology in real time.
I see.
The first real time, as he would like to describe, the first real time system at American Express was the authorization system. You swipe your card and you know immediately whether you can use it or not. So that was pre-web and pre-digital and pre-technology. That was the first real-time system. So I got involved in how can we get rid of certain bumps in the road for our customers in terms of their experience. Can we alleviate any disruptions at the point of sale in terms of being able to provide either a better decision or use data in a more effective way? And that's where I started. And then within a few months, they gave me, through an org change, they gave me also operations. So anything you do online in terms of statements or payments or viewing your bill, just about anything you can do online once you log in is operations. And it was really the first time, excuse me, that operations had a very customer first facing role in a very different way. Even I'd say even more prominent or as prominent as marketing. And marketing at American Express ruled the roost, right? It's a marketing driven company. But now here you have servicing people, building experiences that when you come to the site, not only is it a good experience, but that we can do something more with you in terms of maybe an upsell, maybe a cross sell, at the time. So we took on basically a very nascent process on operations, looked at where the call volumes were coming in, and we started to roll out capabilities. And we started with the simple. And you have to remember, this is at the time when people didn't trust the web. No one would make a payment. People didn't even like to apply for stuff on the web.
I remember. Wow, wow. Let's just take a deep breath right there. I remember those days when people would say, "Well, I'm not putting my information online." Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. It's a very different world now, right? If you don't offer those services, you don't do business with customers. So we started there, and we started to build some really good momentum. We put numbers behind everything. Having a finance background is a huge plus as someone who eventually moved into marketing. So I was really transitioning. At some point, there was a major reorg at the company, and they moved all the digital groups together because they all kind of bubbled up into their own groups separately. So it made a lot of sense to bring everyone together. And I had a choice. And Ash said to me, you can stay in risk or you can move into the web. And he said, look, I think you're really good at this web. And he said, you have nothing to lose. If it doesn't work out, if you don't like it, you can always come home to risk management. And I appreciate that, because it was a safety net for me, because I didn't know how it was going to go, right? It was a new group. In fact, there was a bit of tension with the groups coming together, because there was the central group and all of the disparate groups that work within the businesses. So the groups, there was a little bit of tension of the central group and the business-led groups, but we pulled it together. Everyone came together. I wouldn't say it was an easy road, but I think we really came to a good place where we all worked very well together, and we had good relationships among that team. So when that happened, they gave me all of the marketing groups within the US. So I almost immediately went from probably a year before a straight risk guy, numbers, a lot of spreadsheets, now into trying to figure out the web for American Express. And I had a lot of good people. So we turned that channel into the single largest customer facing channel. If you look at payments and card acquisition and transactions, it was just phenomenal what we did with membership rewards. We took experiences that we did offline and saw that they weren't necessarily as good as American Express wanted, and we turned them into, non-disrupted real-time transactions. And
Have you ever thought about your career? I'm sure you have, because you're a reflective guy, or else you wouldn't have written the book, right? So if he hadn't come into your office that day and said, I need you to lead this web thing, who knows what your career, who knows?
You don't know. I would have probably stayed in risk for the rest of my time at American Express. It was, it was unusual to make such a dramatic move as I made, but kudos to the management team, because they tap people where they see opportunity.
Right. Yeah,
and
good for them.
It gave me a shot, and I wasn't going to let them down.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
It was really nice.
And it was great, your numbers background, your finance background. So you were never just what I call this looks pretty marketing person. You were this makes sense, and here's the data, and here's the numbers, which I really appreciate as a CEO for Riderflex, and somebody that was a CEO for a couple of other companies. I always hated the marketing people that were like, yeah, well, it feels good and it feels right and it smells good. And I'm like, yeah, well, show me the numbers.
Exactly. It's been a huge asset. So, you just mentioned it. I say it all the time. I don't want to be viewed as a pretty pictures marketing guy.
Right.
And it's not a disrespect to certain types of marketing people.
True.
There's a skill and there's an art to marketing. And, I back up everything. Even my budgets are built from the ground up. And I ask my team, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And what do you expect to get for it? And if they can answer those questions, we can back them up by numbers. When I go in for money in terms of my budgets, no matter what company I've worked at, it's very hard for them to say, this doesn't feel right. Right. I don't, a lot of times people go in with budgets and they kind of pull numbers out of the air. And being a marketer, I think I surprised a number of people in a number of jobs by coming in with such a detailed plan.
Oh,
and yeah,
CFOs, they probably loved you. They're like, oh man, Jeff's great.
yeah, they love me, even if they didn't want to, even if they didn't believe in marketing, they couldn't just the numbers. So
It's
if
good.
I'm on
So
the
good.
numbers, then chances are I'll get some of the funding.
Yeah, right. You got more yeses from CFOs than most people. Now let me take a quick pause here. Where are you in your family life at this time? Married, kids, where are you there on the personal side as you're rolling into this more responsibility and VP stuff?
Yeah, so I'm married to the girl who lived next door.
Are you serious? Are you serious?
Yeah, she lived diagonally across, not exactly next door. So
So there were many nights when you snuck out the window and nobody knew. You want to go ahead and confess about that right now?
I'm sorry, you cut out.
Oh man.
No, I was a good boy. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So but we've been married for 32 years.
How about that? Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But marriage is work, and there are times when you have your ups and downs, and we're no different. But you get to a point where you kind of work out the bugs and the nuances and what gets under your skin, and you go from there. So
how many kids?
3.
Grown?
One is actually out of school, graduated about 3-4 years ago. He works for one of my former companies.
Oh, okay. All right.
and talk about strange. He was on a conference call and he told someone I hired at that company that, oh yeah, my dad is Jeff Fleischman. And she had to stop to me. Wait a minute, your dad is who? Jeff? Oh my God. And then she said, did you read his book? Which
good.
he has. So I'm going to have.
That's great.
But yeah, so he's there, and then I have 2 kids in college. One's a junior at Ithaca, and one's a senior, soon to graduate senior at Ithaca. He'll graduate soon, 1 semester. And my daughter, my youngest, she's at Tampa, and she's a junior.
Finally got a girl in there somewhere after 3 brothers and two sons early. You finally got a girl in there.
Absolutely. And I owe the wine industry for my daughter.
That's pretty good. You mentioned, 32 years of marriage is great work. Congrats. For all the folks out there that are younger and they've been married for maybe 10 years, because right around 10 years is when, things you got to learn how to give and adapt even more. One of the things I've gotten really good at now, and I'll be 55 in August, I've just gotten really good at saying, okay, honey. Yeah. Yes, dear. Like just small stuff anymore. It doesn't even faze me. I mean, if she wants to buy a purple couch and put it in the living room, okay. Sounds good. I just don't, and that's my point of bringing that up for anybody listening is, I tell my sons this, I have a 28-year-old, a 30-year-old and a 26-year-old. I always tell them, I'm like, look, the small stuff, just learn how to let the small stuff slide right off your back. It doesn't matter. Now, if she's about to whip out the checkbook and go buy a new car without even talking to you, okay, that's different.
Right.
But if she wants to, do whatever, that just okay, honey. And that solves so many things, Jeff. It solves so many problems.
I think marriage and raising children are pretty much kind of the same philosophy, right? So if you have to count to your kids that she used to count, I'm going to give you to 3. I said once you start counting, you lose. Ooh. So being a parent is it's part psychological. You have to let them know you're in control without having to do too much to prove it. And so, I used to make believe I could feel what's in their stomach. Now I could obviously see what they eat for dinner, and I'd walk away from the table and I'd ask them, did you eat your vegetables? Oh, yes. So come over here. Let me feel your stomach. And I see you had your pasta and you had, where are the carrots? And I had them believing for years that I could tell what's in their stomach.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's
But
good.
even with kids, they're, my kids are overall pretty good. My oldest was my button pusher. So there are some things I won't disclose on this.
Why do we all have those? Anybody that has 3 or 4 kids always has a button pusher in there somewhere. There's got to be one.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but it comes with the territory. And, and you have to really be able to pick and choose your battles. And the ones that count, you fight, and you don't, there's no discussion. It's the dictatorship.
I agree.
Yep. And the other ones, you have to let go. My daughter used to argue every morning what she would wear when she went to school. And her and my wife would argue and argue. And so I said, why don't you give her 2 options and let her pick the 2?
There you go. Give her some power. Let her feel victorious.
And actually, that's a rule that you want to give to people for how to treat a boss, right? Some bosses want that power of making the decision.
Yes.
But they
I call it letting them pee on it. I always tell them, just let him pee on it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we got to do a lot of that. So, but yeah, so it's a good, actually, it worked out well. So I think, in those situations, you could be pushed a lot, especially with kids, and you just have to figure out, don't make everything into a battle.
Well, and by the way, why don't our grown kids just follow the advice? Why don't any of them just follow the damn advice? God, my wife's like, the other day, she's like, we have 4 children. Can one of them just do what we suggest? Just one?
Right. Well, yeah, it's, it's, they have to be themselves, but I do find as they all get older, my younger 2, I think there's a lot of synergies in terms of what I do and what they would do. And my old one's just wired differently. So all kids are wired differently, but he's come around. I mean, he's really become a very different person since he started working. Working will have that effect on people.
You got that right.
And it's not easy out there. So I said, when he was in high school, I'll make $1 million by the time I'm 25. And I'd laugh and say, oh yeah, sure you will. Just don't forget your dad. But it's going to be a lot older than 25. And I hope you're right, but chances are. So now,
tell us. So let's move into the back part of your career now, what you're doing now. Give me a summary of where you're at, what you're doing, company overview, and then after that, we'll get into the book. Yeah, go for it.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Altimetrik. Altimetrik is a digital and data services company. So how I would characterize that is everyone's moving digital. And I can go into all the reasons why, COVID being a big catalyst for all of that. But our founder has been talking about digital business since we were founded 10 years ago. And he came up with a concept that there is a better way of developing digital technology and data to help companies drive outcomes. And he's always been there. It's the world pivoted to where he's been standing because of COVID. And everyone's, woken up to the fact that this thing we call digital business is very important and it's critical to survival. So the company focuses on helping companies scale their digital and data capabilities to get them up and running in a very quick way, driving specific outcomes. So we'll go in and meet with companies. We first want to know what their pain points are, what their challenges are. And then we provide solutions in the form of a proof of concept. We don't come in with a big contract, a multi-year contract.
Okay.
We come in with a solution and we do it in weeks, maybe a couple of months. And that opens the door to building a relationship, building the trust. And we become an extremely large partner to a whole host of companies. We work with Ford, PayPal, Citibank, Novartis, probably several hundred companies. I think we've onboarded 80 companies this year alone.
Nice.
Sizes, startups all the way up to the big guys.
I was going to say, yeah, what do you focus on? So you do startups all the way up to Fortune 500, huh?
All the way. So we can do everything from front end to back end development, complete end-to-end solutions. We have a sister company that we spun off called Calibo, which is a product platform as a service. That company focuses in on integration orchestration in a vendor agnostic and software agnostic environment. So you can imagine all these companies have all these different systems and they don't really talk well together. Some are older than others. We can take the whole thing, re-platform all of those packages and vendors together, integrate them, and push it to the cloud. So you have a company that's a monolithic type of structure, and I'm a marketing guy talking like a tech guy, I think, right? And we move from monolithic to a modern technology platform where people can use data. And our founder likes to say companies spend millions to get data and they turn a data lake into a data swamp. And you'll hear CEOs say, I spend more money, I have more data, and I can do less with it now than I did before.
I was just about to say, in layman's terms, would it be safe to say that Altimetric helps you bring all the data that you have and make good decisions from it and understand it better? Is that accurate?
Absolutely. So we call it a single source of truth. So it's everything from ingestion of structured and unstructured data, because as you know, IoT, the web, transaction systems, there's a proliferation of where the data is coming from. And there's a whole compliance and security level to all of this.
Too. Yeah, that too.
And you bring all that data together, you build the data pipelines, you build it into a data lake. That lake feeds a warehouse. That warehouse you tap into for AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and build predictive tools to really help the company operate and deliver better customer experiences, lower their cost of inventory, make better decisions faster, and deliver, on customer expectations in a much more dynamic way. So data is certainly the lifeblood of every company, and that really is a key component to what we do. We also do things like DevOps, cybersecurity, agile development. So we're a full shop.
So is it a service business and a SaaS business and a software business?
In combination of what we do with our platform company, yes, we do both. We provide, we provide the teams and we provide the thought leadership. In some cases, companies have challenges in that they're silo based.
Yes,
that
every
you
company.
have a lot of technology groups are running technology development, and they're developing things without understanding, are we solving for a business outcome? So we've kind of flipped that, where technology and the business have to work hand in hand, right? But the business has to define what it is that we're going for. What are the outcomes we need to achieve? And then all the other things come into place. What we do a little bit differently also is we have practitioners, and what we define as practitioners, people can look at a process from end to end. So even when we hire, we go through a pretty rigorous hiring process, and we hire, I think, less than 10% of the people we interview. And what we look for are people who can understand the end-to-end process. They can understand that there's a business challenge. That challenge has to be addressed through data and technology. And what it is that comes out on the other side is going to deliver the results that the client needs. So we don't look for someone who's not only good at technology, we also look at people who can also think like business folks. And it's a harder skill to get, but those softer skills are important. And just to let you know real quickly, the mix and business model have led to incredibly strong growth, 50% year over year revenue growth. I mean, not just 1 year, 50. I joined the company, we had 1,900 people.
I was just about to ask you, 1,900. Now what is it at? Yep.
Over 5,500, and we're aiming to go to between 6,000 and 8,000. And so it's just enormous. We've opened up development centers. We have presence in Uruguay, US, and India. Since I joined, we've opened up development centers in Mexico. We have opened up a development center in Poland. We expanded offices in the UK, Ireland. We expanded even deeper into India, deeper into the US, Japan, Canada, Costa Rica. So we're looking now, I think, at Portugal. So the company has seen just incredible growth from an employee perspective, from a revenue perspective, and we're putting on clients. And as a marketer, I like to use company logos. I can't keep up with the amount of
I love that. So not only great for the company, but great for your career to be part of the leadership team, the senior leadership team during that growth phase. So congratulations. By the way, I forgot to mention, now that you've been on the Riderflex podcast, any other recruiting firms or internal recruiters that you've used are all fired, and you have to go through us from now on. Did they tell you that? No, I'm just joking. Yeah. No, congratulations. Seriously, congrats on the growth. I mean, it's really wonderful. I mean, you've had a great career anyway, right? But to be part of that type of growth that's just such great experience overall.
Yeah, no, it's been great. This role I took a very different role when I came here, because I typically work for very large companies. This was a very, very small company.
Small compared to what you'd done. Yes.
That's right. They're very small. Yeah. And it's been fantastic. Our founder is a serial entrepreneur.
Still involved. So the founder's still there every day. Yeah.
I talk to him almost daily.
How about that?
He is he has more passion and more drive than anyone I've ever met in business.
And by the way, 90% of the founders I've interviewed or I've ever dealt with cannot start a company and take it to 5,500 employees and still be in charge. That is a very tiny, small percentage of people on planet Earth that could do that.
Right. And he sold his last company. He grew it from scratch to, I forgot how many it was in. I don't know if it was tens of thousands, but a very large company. He sold for 1.3 billion. And since then, he's had this idea. He started this company on his own. Not, we're privately held. We don't have, a bunch of investors, and the company has grown organically. And it's this inflection point we hit during COVID is when the world said, okay, this digital thing was going to happen at some point down the road. It now has to happen right now.
Yeah, right now.
People see our way of digital business in these small bite-sized outcomes. Our approach is not the big bang approach, because that's rife with all sorts of challenges, and it doesn't always turn out to be what you expect it to be. So we typically go in a very tiny project, and then we end up being one of the largest partners to some of the world's largest brands.
Congrats on that. I want to thank, I got to get the founder. What's the founder's name?
Raj Vadkudi.
Got to get him on the podcast. By the way, when he sold the other company for $1 billion, right, he could have just retired. Meanwhile, here he is still humping it every day, coming into the office, growing his second company, right? I mean, wow. Okay.
And it's not just this guy. He has all sorts of things. He has a foundation that he's very generous to the community.
How about that?
I think he was the backer of the first robotic prostate surgery and funded that.
Wow.
Yep. So he's from Detroit.
Nice.
Very dedicated to Detroit area, has made some significant investments in philanthropy in the Detroit area, also helps the underserved in India,
nice.
Financial education. So yeah.
Nice. Altimetrik.com for the listeners, ALTI metric, TRIK, altimetrik.com for the listeners. Plus you can also follow the company on LinkedIn. Before we run out of time, yes. You're also in your spare time. Hey. You wrote a book because you have so much spare time, right? Yeah.
My book.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I want to see the book. Advice to My Younger Self, right? A common sense guide to navigating your career by Jeffrey Fleischman. Available on Amazon and probably a bunch of other places, right?
Absolutely. Lulu and Barnes and Noble. So yeah, it's interesting. I've always had in the back of my head, what would I have done differently, right? We all do, right? So it's, what would I have done differently? And
yes.
I have my share of cringeworthy moments. I think back of some of the stuff I might have said, thinking I knew what I was talking about, and probably didn't know as much as I thought I did. It's always something that stuck with me. And I met an influencer and she said, you have a story to tell, you should write a book. And I laughed at her. I said, me have a story, me write a book? I said, no, I don't think so. And then, I wrote a blog and I said, here are the things I would have told the younger Jeff. Oh. And I got such a good response out of that LinkedIn blog that I said, you know what? I think I have a book here. And so I turned every one of those different pieces of advice into a chapter. For instance, listen with the intent to understand, find your advocates, find the right work-life balance, pursue your passion. So it gives advice to people and things they need to think about that I wish I had someone to give me that advice when I was younger. So that was really the genesis of the book. And I always believe in giving back. I always invest in my people and my teams. I've always been that way, maybe to a fault where I don't spend as much time doing the same for myself, but I do it for my teams. And I have a lot of people that work for me that had worked for me in the past that are very, very successful. And I wouldn't take all the credit, of course, because they had to earn it on their own. But I've worked with some really talented people. I think giving back to that talent, I've worked with some very, very top name executives who have been CEOs of major corporations. Some of them are still CEOs of major corporations, and they've just been big influence on me. And I'm a, excuse me, I'm a patchwork of the best of what I see.
Nice.
And so I felt that, people have invested in me. I think I love investing in people. I coach, I mentor, and the book was really a way of me being able to give back at scale. So it was a great exercise. I love doing it. And on occasion, I'll get a person to send me a little note and say, I read your book and I want to tell you what it meant. And
that's a special moment, right? Like that's probably worth, just that right there. Forget about any money that's involved. Just getting a note like that, that's got to be pretty powerful.
Yeah, no, right? It is. And on the website, I have a website, advice-to-my-youngest-self-book.com. I tell people, if you like the book, take a picture of it somewhere. I have someone who took a picture of it in the Coliseum. Cool. I took a picture of it in India, and I put it on the website. But the topic is really big. There's a lot of content on the web about people, Oprah and many other people who would give advice to themselves when they were younger. So I think the topic is really relevant, and hopefully.
Where'd you get the photos, by the way, for the website? Did you have to? Was that pulled from something? Or did you have to get permission from the actors to do that? How'd you get that?
There's an artist that created those. And so I took them. Yeah. They were out there. So
okay. I didn't.
Yeah. Well, cool. I hope after this conversation, I won't have to pull any of them. But
sorry.
No. You know what?
I like them.
Yeah. No. It was some artist. He put a bunch of these things together, and
they're cool.
Well, a contrast of the old and new.
Congrats on the book. Really, to be an author, to be a family man, raise children, put all these kids through college, be married for 32 years, and have a great career, continuing to move up and still humping it as a CMO now for a growing company. Hey, man, you've nailed a lot of it. You've checked a lot of the boxes, my friend. Congratulations.
It's been a good run. I have no major complaints. It's been a good run, and just you gotta keep pushing, right? Life in corporate America is not a straight line. I've had some pretty big setbacks, things I didn't expect, but you just keep, like you said, you keep humping it, and you keep pushing forward, and just don't give up. Just keep going, live the passion.
Jeff, thank you very much for being on the Riderflex podcast and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Steve, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.